Hello and welcome, this is NutraIngredients USA. I'm Stephen Daniels. I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Daniel DFabricant, who is the Director of the Division of Dietary Supplement Programs at the Food and Drug Administration. Thanks for joining us, as always, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So every year we kind of do a quick State of the Union address almost. So this time last year we were talking about GMPs. We'd had all those articles in the Chicago Tribune, about 50% of people was not great. What are we seeing this year? Are we seeing progress?
No, and it's concerning. Again, we're still seeing more of the same problems, some of the basics, and that's really that's concerning the agency. There's not much we can do. I think I said it last year. Not much we can do to help in those situations. People aren't setting specs, not following through and testing for specs. The basics. We expect that folks are doing that. So we're still seeing more of that, and it's concerning.
But is it the basics, or is it also the fact that your inspectors are now drilling down into some of the more complex
yes
stuff?
to both, but I think, again, what they're finding are the basics. I mean, our language may reflect more in-depth analysis of the science, the methods, things like that, but, by and large, the violations are staying the same. So, I mean, that's really the concern. It shouldn't be... The topic of discussion really should move to a much more technical basis at this point. We want it to, because that's what really GMPs are about. That's how they move ahead, and so we're anxious to get there.
But why are companies continuing to struggle with this?
I can speculate. You can say it's just resources. You can say that people don't think we're going to get to them. I mean, there's a lot of firms out there that are covered under the GMPs. But again, that's all speculative. I think that the challenge for us is, as the rate, hopefully, as we can get the rate of compliance down. I think that's where that serves everyone best. And we'll do, we're going to take a look at how we do business too, in terms of, we've got a lot of injunctions which are resource intensive. We use seizures as well. What tools can we use to really get that rate down? And do it quickly.
One of the topics that's popped up in various conversations about GMP compliance is this idea of a carrot. Now, you've talked about this.
Yeah. I'm not a bunny, but look, I think if firms want to advertise that they do a good job, fine. I don't think that that's an issue. The issue is when you start talking about an inspection made under 704. That's a prohibited act. So that's one. I mean, advertising shouldn't be violating the law. I mean, I think everyone should. That's a simple principle. But it's the basics. I said in my talk today, and I hold to it. It's like feeding your children. I mean, you got to feed them. You've got to be a GMP compliant firm. And it's just the expectation. It's the expectation isn't going to be lowered. It's not going to be put in place of something that, oh, hey, you get a star for effort. We're not, that's not the point. These are products that 180 million Americans use every day, and our expectation is they meet basic minimal quality standards and they, aren't contaminated with things that adulterate them. I think that's the public's expectation too.
So you had the shutdown recently that obviously affected things. When we look at the stats at the end of the year in terms of kind of year-on-year growth, in terms of number of inspections and all the rest of it, are we going to see? You might see a reduction specific to the month. I mean, I think overall we were up in number of inspections for the whole fiscal year. You obviously are going to see a reduction for most of October. But yeah, I think overall the number of inspections were up this year. Okay. But I mean, one thing that didn't stop during the inspection was, we had the whole issue in Hawaii.
Yes,
which is tragic on so many levels.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But where do we stand on that right now?
Well, the firm recalled. They announced Sunday that they voluntarily initiated a voluntary recall on all lots of Oxylate Pro containing Agilene.
Class 1 recall.
And we don't expect to see, with food, you don't expect to see hepatitis. You don't expect to see liver damage, non-viral hepatitis. You see that, it's a pretty distinct sign. You rule out other causes. It was clear to us that the supplement was playing a role, and so I think that's really that on its face adulterates the product. It's it presents an unreasonable risk of illness or injury under the conditions of use described in the labeling. People weren't abusing the products, and we wanted to take all steps to get it out of the hands of consumers as quickly as possible. And so, firm agreed to a recall. We were prepared to take any measure. That 423A letter stipulates that if firms don't initiate in a 48-hour period, we intend to push ahead with a mandatory recall. We didn't have to use that part of the law, but again, we took the matter very seriously. It met both of those standards, both the Sakota standard and the adulteration standard. So it was our quickest tool to get out of the hands of consumers.
In terms of the product itself, there's been, all the focus has been on the Agilene.
Sure.
Is it part of the bale tree? Is it even? I mean,
well, I think the focus should be on the product.
Yeah.
The focus should be on the product. Agilene as an aside. I mean, I think I think the focus is the product. It's the new dietary ingredient requirement is the supplement containing the NDI. And I think that there isn't safety data establishing that that's safe for use. So with that, it makes it clear that that supplement is not going to, it's technically adulterated. I think given the factors that have happened in Hawaii, that are clearly, it's clearly a temporal relationship between the product and the liver injury. I think that those are serious concerns. And Agilene aside, I mentioned in my talk that we're looking at the chirality. Obviously, if it's something that's not the form existing in nature, well, that's certainly not even a dietary ingredient. Couldn't qualify. The other issue is, I think, really was Agilene in and of itself an article of the diet, and I think that answer is no. So,
talking about NDIs, discussion's still going on. Kind of at this point, no one's willing to put a date on it, but there's one issue that I've seen crop up a little bit that maybe you can kind of give us the official agency view on, which is this idea of like follow-on NDIs. A company gets an NDI and then other people bring out something that they say is the same.
Sure.
Does that then qualify for that NDI, or?
Well, I think the short answer is no. I mean, if you spend if you spend the resources, investigate the science, and establish that your particular ingredient has a reasonable expectation of safety, you get an acknowledgement letter from the agency. I would think at a minimum, Firm B through the gate would have to establish that they were identical to your product before even thinking about going to market. I mean, just in terms of looking at the structure of the law, our view is that if it's a unique product, it may be a similar ingredient. We take great pains not to say it's identical, because I think that's where you get into trouble. We don't know the specs of that other ingredient. We don't know if maybe it's made in an area that has a high amount of elemental contamination and there's lead. I mean, so there's so many issues that aren't known to the agency that I think that our expectation is someone would submit in that scenario. They wouldn't just ride on someone's coattails.
Okay. Another thing that you mentioned this morning, I mean, and the whole NDI in terms of progress is that you've got the review times down.
Sure.
So how's that all working?
Well, I think it works well. I think our staff is very good, very adept at reviewing NDIs, very expedient. We want to be responsive. I think the other thing we've really made a focus on is if something comes in and it's not complete, well, we're going to try to get that out of the system as soon as possible. I think that benefits firms. It benefits us. We want to address those those pieces of information that are lacking right away. We want to and again we want to work with firms to get through the process. If a firm's serious about the process, well, they're going to be in contact with us, if they don't receive an AKL, if they receive an ICL or an IAL and aren't able to negotiate the process. I think that's critical. We're still not seeing a lot of NDIs, and that concerns us.
Okay. One last point that I want to touch on is AERs.
Sure.
What's the state of play right now as far as you see it in the industry?
I mean, I still think, there's underreporting for all commodities at FDA. You've heard me say that before. I don't think dietary supplements are immune or unique from that. Our expectation, we've seen it in firms, is that there's been some evidence of underreporting. I think that's going to continue to weigh on our mind and how we address that. We're certainly going to do outreach to the industry, continue to do outreach to try to bring people into the light, but we're also going to look at healthcare practitioners. I mean, the incidents in Hawaii really emphasize the importance of letting healthcare practitioners know that, look, there's a system in place. And there are key elements that are important to grab in those situations. Labeling. Was the product used consistent with the labeling? Those are the sorts of questions that we expect are being answered.
Okay, well, thanks very much. There's a lot of information right there, Dan.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Stan.
it. Thanks
Pleasure.
for coming out.
Take it easy.
For Nutri Ingredients USA, I'm Stephen Daniels.